All right, we resume learning Mishlei with the Bir Hagra, with the Vilna Gaon's commentary. And as we've pointed out, there are a few different manuscripts aside from as it were, called the official version that was written out by Reb Nachum Mendel of Shklov. Uh, and he said that the Vilna Gaon taught it to him directly, and the Vilna Gaon actually approved of how he understood it. But there are other manuscripts from the Gaon's own writing, and yeah, not on all of it, on parts of it. Sadly, I don't have an edition that incorporates all the different versions together. There are such editions. So working for what I have on Otzer Chochma, I said last time we learned that I want to go through recap, the way it's written in the Vilna Gaon's commentary on the psukim that we've done to date. There's another manuscript, and it's a little bit more kabbalistic in nature. And just to make this a comprehensive series, I wanted to go and revisit the psukim and teach over the Vilna Gaon's commentary as written in yet a third manuscript. And that's what we're going to do today. It's a little bit more kabbalistic than what we've done to date. And so bear with me. We'll do this together. Um, all right. So this manuscript is, starts, whoever brought it to press, says that, this is in addition to a manuscript that we've done previously. So it's going to be a little bit of repetition stuff that we've done already, but it's kedai, for the edition, especially those that are kabbalistic in nature. Mishlei, hu akdamas hasefer. So on the word Mishlei per se. So the very first pasuk says the Vilna Gaon in this manuscript. The whole first pasuk is a introduction to the book. We're going to say for Eno al pshuto levad ela mishalim. כמו שמתחיל בני נרבו דם בשביל פשוטו לא היה בו וכן איש הזור וכן כל הסרט שחור יש פסוקים שמורים על פשוטו אינו Cain. So first of all, this is a book of Mishalim, right? That and the and it's, as it were, his Vilna Gaon is saying Shlomo Melech is warning you from the get-go, don't take this book literally. It's a book of mashal. So he's going to talk about how people conspire to kill people. He's going to talk about how a mistress is trying to seduce a married man, be a homewrecker. And that, of course, all the psukim make good sense if you translate them. They all make perfect sense. But that's not the main point of the book. Even though there's a lot of beauty in how it's written. As the Rambam also deals with this in his Hakdama to the Moreh Nevuchim, so he talks about Mishalim, and he says how whole Mishlei is a mashal, and how Shalom sometimes threw in some extra detail to make the mashal just beautiful to read, to read well, and to be, descriptive, but but he's warned us, this is all Mishalim, so even though there's it's a beautiful read, it's a good read, and there's also stuff to learn, Musar learn just from the most plainest meaning of the words. But the main thing of this book is really behind the words. It's like a mashal and seek the nimshal. Okay. All right. So Shlomo ben David Melech Yisrael is the Mishlei of Shlomo, the son of David, king of Israel. All right, so we had this in the other version. Also, Lomar Mia Machaber, of course, so I should introduce you the book. There's a book of Mishalim that can't, the main point of the book is what these things represent as opposed to how they are literally. But now he's also introducing the author. Lomar Gil Tarim, right? So now there's three descriptions over here, right? Shlomo ben David, Melech Yisrael. Shlomo, son of David, king of Israel. Three things, right? Right, so now this is because there's three titles parallel to the three ideas that are the basis of this book. Moshe Kosovo, as we'll see in Pasuk Page, it's going to talk about the different products that you get from this book, and each one of these products is parallel to one of these three titles. Whether it's certain things are parallel to Shlomo, certain things are parallel to his having been Ben David, and certain things are parallel to his being Melech Yisrael. And that's why he was competent, qualified. I meant to say to write. This book that has a threeness to it, so he had that threeness in him. And so let's let him talk. He's saying his distinct qualifications by calling himself Shlomo and Ben David and Machshel, saying that all the three pillars, three core concepts that are dealt with in this book. He is the one that's qualified to write this book, being that he is Shlomo and Ben David and Melech Yisrael, and no one else would have been as qualified as him to write this book. And this book is like the perfect book. That's why we chose to do it. Also, no better Musar book, for the three types of Musar that we're supposed to get from Mishlei. No better book was ever written, and if no better book was ever written, you have to have the best possible author for this type of book. So now it says the Gaon something very interesting over here. So listen, if it made it into the Bible, so it means it was written Baruch HaKodesh, right? It's not a philosophy book, right? So who cares, what his, that he was the wisest guy and that he learned by David HaMelech, and there's also certain life experiences that come by being Melech. So who cares? Listen, it was written by divine inspiration. It made this to say that he was a Baal Ruach HaKodesh. And because that's why this made it into the Tanakh, and it's not part of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Torah Sheba'al Peh's philosophy. This book made it into Tanakh. That means it's written Baruch HaKodesh. Okay, albeit it's Ksuvim. It's written Baruch HaKodesh. So it's Ruach HaKodesh as opposed to Nevuah, which is Nevi'im. And all of that is as opposed to Chumash, which is Nevuas Moshe, who is the supreme prophet. All right, so, but still, it's written Baruch HaKodesh. So if God, gave him, if this was divinely inspired, for lack of a better word, it was done by divine inspiration, who cares about his qualifications? Right, if it was, he had divine inspiration, to write these words, that's all it takes. That's all it counts, right? That's why it's in Tanakh. It's divinely inspired. So says the Gaon, no, a very fundamental idea. Ruach HaKodesh is not a standard thing. Ruach HaKodesh is actually proportionate to your wisdom and your understanding and your knowledge. There's Ruach HaKodesh, there's Ruach HaKodesh. The bigger the person, the bigger the Ruach HaKodesh, right? As it were, by the way, this is true about Nevuah also. If divine inspiration is the light, right? The light needs a carrier, needs a kli, needs a vessel to hold it. Right? A better vessel could hold more light. A bigger vessel could hold a small vessel can hold a lot of oil, can't hold a thick wick. So it can't hold that much light. It won't generate much light. So if the light, it comes from above, but the light can only be manifest to the extent that it has a vessel to hold it. Right? So yes, of course, it was written Baruch HaKodesh, but that Shlomo got that high grade of Ruach HaKodesh that could write this book would be indicative that he was that type of high grade person that you get Ruach HaKodesh parallel to where you're holding. And that's why also even amongst the Nevi'im, there are different levels. Not all Nevi'im are on the same level. Rambam and Nevuah, I do believe, counts 10 different levels of Nevuah. It's not just, three categories. It's not just three blanket categories: Nevuas Moshe, Nevuas Shar Nevi'im, and Ruach HaKodesh. Which is connected Torah Nevi'im Ksuvim. No, even amongst Torah, of course, that's a singular category of Nevuas Moshe. Okay, singular category of the supreme prophecy, and there are no two Moshe Rabbeinus. There is no Moshe Rabbeinu is in a league onto his own, no, separate. All right, fine. Okay, but even amongst the Nevi'im, Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, they weren't all on the same level, right? Each one was on a different level. Yes, they belong to the same general category called Nevi'im, but they're not all on the same level. And same thing by Ksuvim. Person can be zocher to Ruach HaKodesh, but if he's a small Talmid Chacham, you have to have a certain level of skill. If you're a bigger Talmid Chacham and a bigger Baal Midas, you'll have a bigger Ruach HaKodesh. And therefore, it is definitely significant. Right? Right? It is... Oh, man. Sorry about that. It's mostly definitely significant that he had these three qualifications because you get Ruach HaKodesh parallel to your qualifications and knowledge and achievements in righteousness and tikkun amidas. Okay, ladas. So to know, right? It's a second pasuk already. If you have a Mishlei in front of you, right? It always starts laying out, the benefits you'll get from this book, which, as we said, are three, parallel to Shlomo, Ben David, Melech Yisrael, right? Vem Gimel Dvarim. So now there are three things, not necessarily going in the order of the pasuk, right? But he's putting in conceptual order, right? This book gives you three benefits, three products. Echad Chachma, number one is wisdom, Chachma per se. So now, what is Chachma per se in the context of this book, which is a book of Musar, of ethics and character refinement? Litchakem neged pituyim v'liros es hanolad. Right. So being a Chacham is you're a wise man. Right, so you will outsmart the Yetzer. Yetzer comes to seduce you. You'll outthink him. That's A. That's Chachma A. Chachma B is that we say Ezu Chacham Haroes Hanolad, who is a wise man, someone who could see what's coming. Right, you have to look ahead. So you have to avoid pitfalls. Part of outsmarting the Yetzer is not just in the here and now when he comes to seduce you, but also think a step ahead. Think a step ahead. Right, so you don't walk into any traps. That's Chachma. Right, and give some examples. So Vashen is Musar, and second one is Musar per se. Being refined, being disciplined. Shelo shelech tavaso v'kaso chavshi v'yasers nafsho tamid v'shelo tavaso. Right, so Musar is that you should not let your passions and your desires, run freely, and you shouldn't get angry easily. You should always be disciplining yourself, and take control over your desires. Because even though, of course, everyone intellectually knows that to be out of control with your desires and out of control with your anger management, everyone knows it's not a good way to live. It's not a good way to conduct yourself. But nonetheless, knowing that it's wrong is not enough, right? You have to be disciplining yourself. And this book is a book that will give you advice on discipline, not just wisdom, to outsmart the Yetzer Hara and to see through his lies, but also to discipline yourself. So that's the second, product of this sefer, discipline. V'ashlish, and the third, lahavin es haTorah v'leidas derech hilch ba ki haTorah stuma v'tzorach lavin dorin toch dor because of lahavin. Right. So now the third thing is understanding, but that goes on the Torah. Right. You can't take the Torah at surface value. Right. Because the Torah at surface value, if you learn it shallow enough, you'll hear whatever you want to hear. You won't get to the real das Torah, and we rank about this all the time. Against all these cheap translations and all this watered down 1 minute word. Can't go any longer. You got to keep it simple and quick, right? You don't get to das Torah. You don't get to what the Torah. the message that the Torah wants to give you and the understanding. You don't get to the message, right? You have to. Torah requires understanding, which is love and davar mitoch. As he says that based on what you know, you have to like that's just a stepping stone. You have to be maven davar mitoch davar. You have to use whatever you know as a basis, to move on to the next step. And this book will also teach you Havana, and how to be Mev Torah, like giving you a derech in Havana, right? And because the Torah cannot be understood on the surface level. On the superficial, shallow, it does nishkin Torah, right? Maybe good philosophy, maybe good messages, but it's not Torah. Torah is what's behind. Okay, what's behind the simple meaning? So that's why the Shlomo for Chachma, because Shlomo was the wiser man. Ben David, his son of David. We had this also in the other version, right? That Ben David, son of David, because David was Chasidus. Shomer Nafshin ki Chasidani, person sees David in a Chalom should yitzapel Chasidus, you can be assured that he is going to reach Chasidus, which is to go lifnim meshur sadin, right? So Shlomo beno be'emes chashlo ki ben yisi la'avi v'erni. So now he's Ben David, and I'm the real continuation. I mean, he doesn't reference this, but the Rambam writes in the Moreh Nevuchim in Perek Zion, Ben is also Talmud. It doesn't just mean biological, so like Talmidim. So he's really he goes in the derech of David, not just the biological son. He goes in the derech of David. There is a chassid, which means that he is he disciplines himself. The chassid, does lifnim mishur. He doesn't just do exactly what the law demands. He goes lifnim mishur, which involves a great deal of discipline, right? To rein yourself in even further. Right. Melech so shator nitna lahem v'yodin drachah is Melech Yisrael, because the Torah is Nachlas Yisrael, right? I don't remember if we spoke about this earlier, but Rav Yaakov Weinberg used to always say that why did the Kodesh Baruch Hu give the Torah to the Avos, right? They wanted to do the mitzvahs. Avram Avinu did all the mitzvahs before they were commanded. And we just said, Gadol mitzvah v'shenu mitzvah v'is. It's better to be commanded in doing it as opposed to doing it on a voluntary basis. So why would God withhold from the Avos the schus of being mitzvah v'os? They wanted to keep the Torah anyway. His answer was, you can't give the Torah to individuals. The Avos says, they're individuals. Torah is a bris olam. It's an eternal covenant. Right, so you can't make an eternal covenant with individuals here today and gone tomorrow. Only a nation is a big enough vessel to hold Torah. Only a nation, right? Yes, because a nation is all the generations combined, the ones that came before Mount Torah, and the ones that until the end of days. Only a nation is a big enough vessel to hold Torah, and that's the seer. The Maharal says this. That's why one of the Memches Dvarim Shator Niknes Bahem. One of them is no sebom chaver. You have to feel that your friend's problem is your problem also. Carry his burden with him, right? All right, because the Maharal explains over there on that Mishnah. That's why it's one of the Machazor Shatar explain, because you have to be klal oriented, because the Torah was given to klal Yisrael. Morasha Kilas Yaakov. It's not the legacy of individuals. It belongs to the nation. So Melech Yisrael is that he knew Torah. If he was the king of Israel, and only Yisrael is the kli that holds the Torah. All right, so lakachas musar, right, and to take musar. Right, it says in the third pasuk. So talk to shelo yomar imkein it yaser kol mashu yuchal beresen li sanos harbe, because abo ein ze derech tova elakol b'haskel. Right, so it's like Musar Haskel, right? Musar Haskel, take Musar Haskel. Why just call it Musar? What's Musar Haskel? Miloshin Seichel. So now what we had before is that Haskel Miloshin, it should be with Hatzlocha. Rabbi is saying something else. right? Right, you say like this: the Musar has to be well thought out. It has to be, say, okay, I'll be, forget it. Eating is bad. Eating too much. I'm just going to fast and fast and fast. That's not good, right? Because then, you go to the opposite extreme. You'd be depriving the body of what it legitimately needs in order to serve Hashem. You can't be mamish starving and understand Torah if your brain won't work properly if you're malnourished. Right? So it has to be b'seichel. It has to be called behaskel. Or it has to all be done with seichel. We said over here, chiluk ben chochma seichel kol kasad shemase b'chochma nikra seichli. Right? Right. So now, what's the difference between seichel and chochma? No, chochma. We had something similar in the other version. Chochma is purely in the head. Haskel, seichel is seichel tov l'chol osehem. Osehem. We had a lot of this in the Reishis Chachma, if you're following that series. Seichel goes on, that is how you conduct yourself. If you conduct yourself intelligently, right, that's called Haskel. So, it comes from Chachma, but it's Chachma when put into Maisa. That's what it's called Haskel, right? Musar Haskel is discipline, it's La Maisa, but it's what's Chachma. When the pula that's done b'chachma is called Haskel. Well, tzedek mishpat umei shorim. So now tzedek mishpat umei shorim, I believe, is lashon pasuk. So what's tzedek? So tzedek mishpat umei shorim. Begimel yorim pam b'derech mitzua daikavu tzedek mo maznei tzedek b'tzedek tishbot. Right. So now these three tzedek mishpat umei shorim. We've had this. There are different going sometimes. Says it this way, sometimes says it that way, but it's been the basic same message that overall you should generally conduct yourself in the balanced middle way, like the Rambam advocates in Hilchos Deis, right? But like the Rambam himself says, sometimes you gotta bend to one side for whatever reason, whether the situation demands it, or whether the situation demands it. Or whether for tikkun amidas, you feel you're leaning a bit to the other side, so you have to lean, overcompensate. You can't just stay exactly in the middle because then you'll be pulled, in the direction that you feel you're a little bit weak. So you got to overcompensate. So tzedek is tzedek justice. Justice, right? So justice is the middle path. Like Moznei Tzedek, a just scale that's perfectly balanced. It's called Moznei Tzedek, justice. Tzedek Tishbot, right? Ubam b'tzasmol ha'taiva shetzorach yasmo vu mishpat. Sometimes, if you feel you're just too much of a baal taiva, so you have to be bedin and begvura. That's mishpat, which is din, which is from gevura. So if you're bending too much, you're too much of a baal taiva, so you got to come to go the opposite extreme and go b'mishpat, which is din, right? Sometimes you have to go to you got to go to the right side. Vasisa yashar v'hatov, hayashar v'hatov. You have to sometimes like be nicer to people than what they really deserve, which is a real chiyuv. So yosher is mixed with the tov, and that's where we find in halacha that sometimes a person has to give a little bit more than what's strictly deserved, and it's even a chiyuv to do so. That's why it's called yosher. Yosher would supply justice, but it's tov v'yosher Hashem. Sometimes the yashrus demands to do a little bit more, and that's if a person feels he's a little bit tightwad. You got to be a little bit more generous. Now, as you might recall, he worked out these three. It's always the same basic message. These three is connected: the middle, the right, and the left. The middle, chasodim and gvura, when necessary. Not so. As you recall from the other version, sometimes he worked out what these three terms are, where they are, whether they're connected the middle or the right or the left. Right? He has different versions of that, but the message is always the same. Skambir is right. ladas, rak lekachat shu amasa shel hamusar, pasuk of nez lokar rak hayedia, right? So now over here, he's talking about doing. That's why it's the kachas musar, right? The musar haska because doing. So you got to do. So doing is tzedek mishpat meishorm. The pasuk before was talking about ladas, ladas chachma, right? So there's the intellect, and then there's the theory, and then there's the practice. Pasuk Beis was the theory. Pasuk 3, Pasuk Gimel is the practice. Vein b'chol dal dvarim. Rakshar Avi is he kula migimel gam kain. Right? So now it's really four things. There's the intellect, right, and then there's right side, left side, and the middle path, which is predominantly where you should be. So altogether, it's four things, right? If I'm reading the four things, if I'm figuring this out correctly, it's written very typical Gaon style, very short, and a little bit on the cryptic side, but maybe it will become clear as now he gets very Kabbalistic. Vu'al derech emes chachma ubina yeduim yud kei shel Hashem. So now to go Kabbalistically, which is what we were waiting for. So now to go Kabbalistically, chachma and bina, wisdom and understanding, are connected the yud and the hey of yud kei vav kei. Yud chachma, hey bina, as is well known. Musar, now discipline, who hadas, now musar is actually which is the discipline is das, right? Because it's something which I don't know if we ever discussed this. Das has a duality to it. Das is, first of all, it's an intellectual process of coming to a concrete conclusion. After you have the chachma, which is the axioms, and then the bina, which is what you could build on, then das. Right, it's like to come to a concrete conclusion, right? That's das as far as intellectual processes. But then there's another aspect of das that spreads throughout all the midas, that based on these concrete conclusions, you're going to conduct yourself. As long as it's all just theory, it's not really going to make a difference. Chachma bin, it's still just, for lack of a better word, just theory. But then das, you come to that concrete conclusion. That conclusion could be mispashet. And you start running your life based on what you know to be true. But das is when you come to that concrete conclusion of knowing that it's true, and then based on that, you lead your life. And that explains why sometimes we don't count das. Sometimes we count chachma bina das. Sometimes we don't count das. We start keser chachma bina because when we count das, we're referring to the intellectual processes. When we don't count das, even though it's there, it didn't disappear. But it's like the neshama of all your midos, which is the secret of why the Rambam calls midos deot. He calls it midos deos because you are acting based on your perceptions of reality. If you think the world, God forbid, is a cruel place, you'll be a tough guy. You think the world is an easy place, you'll be a soft-going guy. Generally, your midos are reflective of how you how you see reality, or it goes the other way. Because you have these midos, you're going to rationalize and say, well, that's the way life is, so the way I'm acting is perfectly justified. Either way, the midos, are going to fit with your perception of reality, whether your perception of reality formed your midos or your midos formed your perception of reality. So here, the musar, which is now discipline, is das. Mitzad das is mispashet and spreads within all your midos. So musar, chachma bina, is yud and hey, and the musar is connected das, which goes down to all the midas. Keitz hachaim hu chachma bina lachacham v'lavim miskos ubazeh v'chaylom vein son v'etz harabah v'etz das tov v'ro ha'maisa ha'muta k'mo achila v'shtira v'hamishkol shim yaser bishkol l'v'shem shemai b'dushu tov v'im lav hu ra kanchach musar v'tzorach b'tchila yedias ha'musar v'achach l'ma'aseh ha'musar. Right? So now, so going on what I said, he says Chachma and Bina, those madrigas are connected to the Eitz HaChaim, right? Because it's of course there's no Yetzirah, in the pure Das Torah, where the Yetzirah doesn't infiltrate over there. The Eitz HaChaim that's why Eitz HaChaim is connected to Torah. Eitz HaChaim is machazikim, but there's no Yetzirah in Torah, in the pure Das Torah. Problem is that Torah's the pure Das Torah, the Eitz HaChaim, is not in Olam Hazeh, and that's why we say that Chachma and Bina, these madres are lamala min hateva, from Bina and upwards. Bina is always the eighth, for reasons that maybe we'll explain. Bina is the eighth, bottom up. We say it's all lamala min hateva. The Yetzirah, no Yetzirah there because lamala min hateva. It's in the world of ideas, of Torah ideas, not the world of ideas of Torah, which where it's all emes and no sheker. Chaim and emes are sin. That's a Chaim, Chaim and emes without getting into it. So Yaakov, Titemes Yaakov, and Yaakovinu lo meis. It's the pure tov without any ra, right? And therefore, it's called Chaim, it's Chaim, and it's also called emes, right? But then the where the midas are is the body and the midas and the bodily forces. That's Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra land, Tov V'Ra. Das Tovara, get it? Right? That, it's over there, you can use the body for good, to eat L'Shem Shemaim, and even to, live with your wife, L'Shem Shemaim, to make a Jewish family, right? And to do all the other mitzvahs that there are in family life. And that's it. You need Das to make sure you do it Tov and not Ra, because the Yetzirah wants you to also eat, but eat in a way that you're deviating from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to have family life, family stuff in a way that you're deviating and you're just distancing yourself from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you need the Das to negotiate between the Tov and the Ra. So it's a Das Tov Ra. The Das is the countermeasure. Like everyone knows, the original Chet of Das Tov Ra was to mix the Tov and Ra. As Nefesh Chaim says, Das was correct, that the Tov and Ra got hopelessly mixed. And you need Das, right? Das, which also means very strong orientation as to what's real, so you don't fool yourself. You need Das as a countermeasure that you'll be manhig, this your midas, which are being pulled by both the Eitzar Tov and by the Eitzar Ra. Sadly, always stronger by the Eitzar than by Eitzar Tov. That's why you need Das, to Yemein Das Havdol Minayim. That's why we have Havdol Chorna Das. Das is, to separate the good from the evil, and that, using my body this way is good, and I will not use my body that way, which is bad. You need a lot of Das, and that's the Musar comes from Das, the Das that goes down, and, based on your Das disciplines you. If it's Das that comes from Das Torah, it comes down and it permeates your midas to bend them, to only use them for good and not for bad. Right? And that's what he goes on to say. The first course you have to need knowing the Musar. So that's Das, that's an intellectual process. And then there is the Maisa Musar, and that's mitzad how, like we explained, Das goes down and becomes like the neshama of the midas, as per White Rambam, the secret of White Rambam calls midot deot, that the neshama of the midas, good midas, is the Das that goes and permeates them, and is their guidance system that should only function litzad tov and not litzad ra. Reject the tzad ra. The Das that will be mavdil ben the tov and ra. That's the Das that's a countermeasure to Eitz Das tov ra. It's the good Das that's mavdil ben tov ra and undoes the bilbo created by Eitz Das tov ra, which is in the lower body in the midas called vav and hey of the name. That's what he goes on to say. Vu zer v'nukva. That's the zer ampin and nukva. These are the partsufim, these 7 lower midas that we call teva, where the Yetzirah, has a strong foothold. The 7 that's called teva break up into 2 partsufim, 2 general operating systems. One's called zer ampin, and that zer ampin is a partsuf that includes in it, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, 6 meters. Those 6 meters are included in parts of Zer Anpin. Now, of course, when it becomes a whole parts of it kind of it grows its own Chachma Bina Das, mikoch what it's yonik from the original Chachma Bina Das. It like grows its own. That's like it's like a kid. He initially, so that's exactly what Zer Nukva is the meat of Malchus, which is the Nekeva, that's the Makabo, right? And it's like you have a child Bekatnus, and that's before it has Moichin, and then at Bar Mitzvah comes a Bar Das, and it's called that really the Das that went into these 6 meters now caused them to evolve, and now there's like the child becomes a Bar Das in its own right because of all the Das that it absorbed from his parents, right? To say it roughly, it's called when it becomes a whole parts of Zerampa when it's begadlus, right? And it grows ahead, which is exactly what happens in the life of a kid. He's a lav Bar Das, and becomes a Bar Das, right? But generally speaking, the 7 lower meters break up into 2 parts. This one is Zer Anpin and Nukva. The 6 meters, and then the 7th meter, which is Malchus, is a whole parts of called Nukva, which are connected the Vav and Hey of the name, right? Right? So now, so now you need this Das comes down. Now Das comes down in Chasorim and Gvuras. Das is not one thing. Chasoris, rolls, and this is the time for Chesed. No, now it's time for Gvura. Das is not a stagnant thing. Das is, rolls with the situation. Das is inclusive of Chachma, of Chesed and Gvura, and sometimes, because it juices up both the Chasorim and Gvuras, but also Das is, it's Chesed time. They got, okay, no, now it's Gvura time. Flip back to Chesed, because it's, well, that's what you need, or that's what the situation demands. Right? Right, and now this is machshav and maisa. So lahavin, chachma binas lahavin, machshava, and lakachas musar haska, that's maisa. And so chachma bina eitzachayim machshava, the good, the good countermeasure to. Right, to the Eitz Das Tovara, where the Ra infiltrated our midas, which is our character traits and the way we conduct ourselves, which generally speaking, the general category is Zer V'Nukve, the 6 spheres of Chesed Gvur Tveres Netzach Hod Yesod, and its female counterpart, which is the 7th, Malchus. Right, that's where Maisa is. So it's Machshava and Maisa, and it's the koach of the Machshava coming down and permeating the Maisa, that the Maisa should be good and not bad. That's the koach of Das, that's Musar. That's Musar, which is the koach of Das mitzad, how it's mispashet lamata, and to become the neshama of our character traits and all that we do, if it's good Das. Right? And that's what I'm saying. That's why you'll find also my words, right? Vayomer Kim, Vayaso Kim, right? So Vayomer Kim, Vayaso Kim, that's thought, and there's action, right? You saw b'machshava, right? And now Klaiso also, that Klaiso is oile b'machshava tchila, Bereishis Mishli Sosh Nikru Reishis, right? So I guess it's going on that Shlomo, Chachma, Ben David, Musar, Maisa, Chasidus, right? And then Yisrael also, Melch Yisrael is, that Yisrael is the Reishis HaMachshava, because it's going on Das Torah. But now he sums it up, Yud, Hey, and Vav, Hein, Sheba Machshava. So now, generally speaking, if you really, even though, Vav, the Vav and Hey, relative to Yud and Hey, is Maisa versus Machshava, but even the Vav versus the Hey, you could also say Yud, Hey, and Vav are all Machshava, because the Gemar HaMaisa is in the Hey. Malchus, the Nukva, is where the action gets done. right? Hey, but my we close Gam Kain Gimel Al Bechol Dalid, right? And of course, it itself also is inclusive of Chesed Din Rachamim, because it's the whole parts of everything gets absorbed by the Malchus. But of course, altogether there are 4. All right, there's a lot to unpack here, a lot to think about, but I think we got the basic gist done. I see I have a ticklish situation. I will stop here, but we did a lot for one day. We will continue with this next session, Be'ezer Hashem.